Every choice builds character. On the Virtuosity podcast, we explore how to make every day a rep toward excellence. I'm Corey, your host and co-founder of Virtuosity. My journey into character development began in sport, where I discovered that strengthening my character didn't just improve my performance, it transformed my entire life. Since then, I've been gripped with understanding how we can intentionally build character to fuel both personal and professional success. At Virtuosity, we believe character is like a muscle. It needs consistent training. That's why we've built a research-based system that acts as your character gym, making character development practical, scalable, and accessible, even within the largest organizations. On this podcast, we sit down with participants from our flagship Virtuosity Program, where individuals commit to a full year of daily character development powered by Virtuosity. Our guests will share why character matters to them, how they're applying it in their personal and professional lives, and the insights they've gained along the way. We hope these conversations challenge, inspire, and equip you with new ways to integrate character into your own journey. Subscribe to stay up to date with our weekly episodes, and if something resonates, share it with your friends and colleagues. Ready to start your own Virtuosity journey? Download the Virtuosity Character app or visit virtuositycharacter.ca to learn more. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 6th episode of the Virtuosity podcast. If you're new, I encourage you to check out our launch episode with Mary Crossan for a powerful introduction to this series. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Trish Lee as our guest. With a degree in psychology and additional studies in finance and accounting, Trish built a 34-year career at the Canada Revenue Agency, serving in roles from officer to trainer to senior management. Throughout, Trish remained committed to service, whether supporting taxpayers, colleagues, or stakeholders, and led with a servant leadership approach focused on empathy and connection. Guided by the belief that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, Trish built trust through initiatives like job shadowing, morning blogs, and inclusive team activities that fostered personal relationships and team cohesion. In 2016, Trish became engaged with CRA's introduction of the leader character model and co-developed the 13-month Aspiring Leaders program, which introduced character-based leadership to future leaders using material from the Developing Leadership Character book. The program earned a CRA Award of Excellence in Innovation and Experimentation in 2020. Since retiring in 2022, Trish has continued exploring character development, taken a deeper interest in nutrition, and refined her culinary skills, pursuing growth with tools like the Virtuosity app as part of her commitment to becoming a better version of herself. Trish, you've been on the character journey for quite a while, and it's fantastic to finally have you part of the Virtuosity program and here today to share all of your insights. So I'm really excited to dig into today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Corey.
So a question that I always start by asking all of our guests is, why does character matter to you?
I think character matters because I look at it as bringing a holistic approach to wellness. And wellness is key to everything we do. And again, a character is actually the basis, I think, for that. And oftentimes, people in the past, I think, talked about character. You go, oh, yes, we know what good character is. But how do we measure that? And essentially, like, what is good character? One of the interesting things that I've been following is Stoicism has really become quite popular. And part of that approach, of course, is on character development. And they look at philosophers, right? And again, they say this is how we should behave, but it's fine saying that. How do I know I'm doing that? And what tools can I use to bring that out in myself? But more importantly, how do I even take a baseline measure? And then putting that all together with who we are as a person and how well we sleep and nutrition and exercise, they're all connected. But character is the key piece of that, I think.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And it's interesting with your focus on nutrition and cooking. I think a lot of people look at health as the kind of basic foundation for everything. But if you actually kind of go a level even deeper than that, character supports that health and wellness, because you start to understand, well, maybe your nutrition isn't supporting different initiatives in your life, for example, and you can actually look at your character to see how can you enable better nutrition, for example. So your focus on the wellness piece is something that definitely resonates with me for sure, and it helps all other aspects of your life.
It does, and one of the interesting things about the nutrition piece for me, I love to entertain and I love to host dinner parties. And again, I think it's a reflection in terms of I believe in food can bring people together and then wonderful
Yeah.
conversations, right? And I'm very open. I'm aware of many different eating styles. It's what works for the individual, but just having them bringing a level of awareness to how you feel after you eat certain foods and then creating an environment to dine in that perhaps isn't what your usual dining is, right? And making it a real event. I think that's really, really important. And I just love doing that.
That is so cool. Yeah, thinking and how much character it takes to create that environment for people to come together. And as you mentioned, the flexibility around people enjoying food in different ways, that's just incredible.
Mhm. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you've been deeply involved in the character space actually with CRA going back all the way until back in 2016. Can you share more about some of your experiences that you've had with CRA and some of the maybe the standout moments or projects you've been along for in the past?
Well, I was very excited when CRA decided to adopt the model. And again, it was adopted and the focus initially, because it's, oh my gosh, we're a big organization, 44,000 employees, right? You had to have a starting point. So their starting point was actually bringing it in at executive level hiring. And that was the initial focus. But of course, there were web pages created. And again, little email blasts, but not a lot of active engagement as we went throughout the organization. Well, every morning I used to send out my morning blog and I thought, oh my gosh, to start sending this out. And I did. And then the first team meeting, one of my team members put up their hand and said, well, we really like this character piece and we'd like to know more about it. And so we started to have conversations. So again, it became an agenda item at my monthly meetings. Well, what I realized is my blog was being disseminated throughout the organization, not just my team. And so other people started talking about it, and it was just getting the conversation going. And then every opportunity I had, so I was a member of Toastmasters. So at Toastmasters, one of the things I'd speak about was the character leader model and what it was about, right? And then I was a member of the insolvency group, and I spoke about how important that was in terms of when we're dealing with insolvent individuals. The character piece is key on that because that's a very challenging time in an individual's life, right? So every opportunity I had, I spoke to character at work.
Oh,
But again, what the
amazing.
missing piece was, and I would sit there and I would think, oh my gosh, and the web pages were excellent, right? But people are busy and they've got their tasks. And I thought, but there's a whole group of people out there that probably don't know about this. So I thought I'd approach my director at the time. And again, he was an acting director, so he was very engaged because he was going to be going through the executive hiring, through the character process. So he was very interested that I was interested in doing this. So I found he was very supportive of me creating a program and rolling it out for people who were interested in future leadership roles, right? It was just the sort of the beginning. So two other colleagues and I looked at it, sent out an all-staff email just to gauge interest. Oh my gosh. When we ran the in-person session, we had 150 people attend. It was like, oh wow, like there's interest in there.
Yep.
But again, we didn't really have a program designed. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, now we've created some excitement. Gosh, we better do something with this. So that was in late 2019.
Mm.
And again, I had a full-time role in managing the National Insolvency Unit. So I'm thinking, wow, I don't know how this is going to come about, but excellent book, Developing Leadership Character was the tool that we used and thought, well, what we'll do is we'll roll out the model and then on a monthly basis, speak to each dimension. We'll send emails, try to create activities, have a monthly session at the end of the month to gather people together. So we had initially 65 people who committed to the program because I wanted people who were really interested in committing. And I explained the time requirement and what was involved. So the first task that we had them do in December 2019 was write a letter to their future self.
Mhm.
And again, it was a fun thing and a great way for us to, we thought, to start the program. But what
Yeah.
I noticed starting to happen in myself was as I was going through the suggested readings, every dimension, I was doing all the readings. I couldn't get enough of the material. And, I was so grateful that the pandemic happened because it allowed the three of us to spend a ton of time to bring forward a more fulsome program than would have been possible if we hadn't had the pandemic. We all had a lot more time. And then we were excited. This was a time of crisis. This was an unknown.
Yeah.
How is that reflected in leadership? How does character play into that? And then I even saw in my own team, which I was so excited about. So we were a very paper-based organization. And when the pandemic hit, the offices were closed. We couldn't get the paper in an electronic format. We figured it would take 8 to 11 months. I had 28 people who put their heads together, figured out how we could do this, how we could still it was incredible, Corey. And I thought, wow, this is amazing to watch this group of individuals just becoming the best version of themselves in this crisis, right? Not to
Yeah.
say that we didn't have challenges, but the collaboration and the kindness that they were showing to their colleagues and saying, are you okay? And one of the interesting things for me is I've always led from a perspective of being compassionate and caring.
Mm.
During the pandemic, when we would have our morning meetings online, one of my colleagues, and I've never forgotten, said, I never thought I'd ever say I was afraid to go into work. But this virus has me frightened and I'm a bit uncomfortable. So we all shared that and how we could support each other. Those conversations would have never happened if that hadn't happened. So I think so many good things came out of an example of something, right? That was just incredible. And then the program, we did a 3-month leading in crisis, and then we got back on regular track again. But I have to tell you, it was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had in my life. And I learned so much about myself during that time.
Oh, that is just phenomenal. And it just sounds like, right place, right time, and so much good came out of it. And I'm curious if there's listeners out there that are, in a similar position as you, where they're loving this character stuff and they want to bring it more into their organization. Do you have any tips in terms of what really played a key role in helping develop this program? You mentioned that I think it was your director that was very supportive of bringing the program to fruition. Were there any other key components, would you say, that really helped bring this initiative forward?
And I just think speaking to the importance of hiring the right individuals and how that character interview plays into that. And like I said, he was an acting director at that time. He was going to be going through an interview that was based on that approach. And I remember I connected with him 10 minutes before he entered his interview, wished him luck, gave him a little set of things to consider. And after, he said it was the most amazing interview, but he said, this is what we need organizationally, right? So again, I was lucky at the time that he actually had the opportunity to go through the process, but then he shared that with our office. And it was like, this is the way of the future for us, right? Of course, competence and commitment are important, but character is actually the key piece in all of this. And we're living through a pandemic. You can see how important that is. Right? So
Yeah,
again, and
definitely.
I think it is. And again, I think people are challenged at first because they go, oh, that's just some subjective, or how do we measure that? Oh my gosh, this is how we do it. It's based on science, tons of research, right? And I think we all share wanting people of good character, and we want to be known as a person of good character.
Mhm.
What does that
Definitely.
mean? And thinking about it, I think oftentimes you're busy in a role. What are you becoming when you're busy doing? Well, what are you becoming? Right.
Mhm.
And again, one of the impactful things for me since I've retired is a lot of people that I've met in retirement, I feel are a bit lost, or they're not sure who they are, or they became this person and now they're not that person. So who am I? There's a lot of existential concern. And I always say to them, perfect time to focus on your character.
Yeah.
right? It's a key piece of going forward. And it's a great piece that's missing as we retire and we change whatever chapter we're at in our life.
Definitely. That very deeply resonates with me because when I really got gripped into the character area, I was transitioning out of being an athlete that I'd been my whole life, thinking I was going to try and pursue professional athletics. And then I just wasn't. And I felt like totally lost, had no idea. So very similar in terms of identity change from, retiring versus, well, retiring from athletics, and character definitely helped me through that process. I wanted to go back to your comment about your director going through the interview process, because I think it's really incredible for the listeners that don't know how much CRA has done around hiring on character and that amazing initiative. And I think this idea that when you really embed it into your organizational practices, like, hiring on character, it really does incentivize other people to actually develop character. So you kind of had that route for you, which was really good. But I think importantly too, if you're hiring on character, knowing that you can actually develop character. None of us have perfect character. And so the fact that CRA also was embedding these programs to help people develop their character, I think was such a key important piece. So it's just incredible, all the stuff that CRA has been doing around character.
Just amazing, and Sonia Cote was the individual actually who was pivotal. And so the board challenged her with like hiring. And one of the questions to her was, well, how do you know we're doing the best we can in hiring? And she stepped away and thought, well, that's a very good question, right? And she was fortunate at the executive forum, leader character model was rolled out. And again, that was the starting point. And everybody was excited because it's like, oh my gosh, yes, this is what we need. And then an entire department was created, and there was a director of that department. And again, they did an exceptional job, but there were so many things to cover off. And at our level, I saw the need for it. So it's like, let's make it work at both ends of the spectrum, right? And moving this forward as quickly as we can, or at least having conversations about it. People going, oh my gosh, yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah. And it's so great to have, thinking about hiring on character, that's quite a big task. And then also the development of character plays such an important role to be able to hire on character. And Mary actually wrote an article on just to be able to hire on character, you can't just understand the language, because these virtues manifest in such nuanced ways, as you've probably really started to see with Virtuosity in that level 1. We're meant to discover what these virtues and vices look like, and they show up so differently. And so I think for any of the listeners out there that are thinking about hiring on character, that development of character to underpin your capacity to see character in others is such an important piece. And just incredible. I did want to, I had picked up earlier from some of your notes that one of the things in your programs was a really kind of creative way to develop one of the dimensions. You had mentioned that for integrity, you encouraged participants to develop, I think it was a coat of arms. And I love any creative approaches. And I think listeners would be interested in what this looked like. So can you share with us what this exercise was?
So that was so much fun. So again, every month we rolled out a dimension, and that was the activity for integrity. We thought, developing a personal coat of arms. What would that look like? And what's the expression of that? And why is that important to you? It was amazing. So people actually did drawings, and then it was their explanations, and to watch what was important to them. It was so just cool. Incredible in terms of this is important to, and it was reflected in a coat of arms. So that was a fun thing. Another thing that we've done, we had people write their eulogies, and I've done that because I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett. And of course, he often talks about, you want to be, what are people going to say at your eulogy? And are you living that? Is my behavior reflecting that? Right. And I think about that often. It's one thing to think about it and to have the intention. It's another thing that my behavior that you see is actually a correct reflection of who I want to be, or am I becoming a better person? Right. And interestingly, one of my challenges has always been courage. I'm a very introverted person. I'm extremely shy. One of the things that rolling out the Aspire Leaders program did is actually it pushed the bar for me in terms of that. But I think if you're passionate about something, it's funny. It's not that you're not afraid. It's just that you have other supporting dimensions that move you along.
Yes, that is so spot on. When we do, well, in the Virtuosity program, we'll get to the courage session and we ask people what they wish they had more courage to do. And then we kind of essentially come up with these plans based in character to help people become more courageous. And that is spot on, that insight that you're picking up, where if you have passion and purpose around something and the integrity in terms of this is what you stand for, it really helps to kind of catalyze that courage to really support it. So that makes so much sense. So you've been a part of the Virtuosity program now for a few months, and I'm hoping that you could share some examples of how you're noticing it's impacting you. I know you've said that you have a big focus on the well-being side of things. So have you noticed this daily commitment to character development impacting your well-being in different ways?
And I have. So one of the things I've made it a daily practice. And for me, routine is very, very important. So it's encouraged me to exercise first thing in the morning. So it's interesting. I have the luxury right now. I'm currently in my next stage, so I don't have to run to the office or whatever. But it was interesting. I now wonder why I didn't do this when I worked. It doesn't matter. But now I do my first morning walk. And then I come back and I do my virtuosity. And that's how I start my day now. And it's funny, it's become a key piece of making my day one route. If I don't do that first thing in the morning, the day's not off to a great start. And again, it's that exercise piece. I've always struggled with exercise. So one of the other things I've done is I've joined Tai Chi. And the link between Tai Chi and character is incredible because I didn't know that. I joined Tai Chi because I was thinking a lot of medical evidence is coming out in terms of supporting the cognitive development and what it can do from a health perspective. And it is very challenging to learn. The type of Tai Chi I've learned was introduced in Toronto by a gentleman from China, and one of my instructors actually learned from him. So I feel very fortunate. But one of the things I found in myself, there's 108 moves you need to learn, and there's a language, and there's everything around this. And I remember attending the first beginner's class, and I finished that beginner's class, and then you can move up to the next level. And one of the instructors said, "Oh, Trish, you come to the next level." I said, "Oh my gosh, no. Like, I can't do this online. I don't even know what I'm doing half the time." And they encourage, don't memorize. You have to get in there. You have to just listen and let your body learn. And that's not something I was comfortable with. And they said, "Please don't memorize the names. Don't go home and take those sheets and memorize." So I took another entire beginner's class, and you look at the person beside you to help you, but I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm still not sure what I'm doing here. Right? And as you start to talk to other people, they're feeling that same discomfort or whatever we call it, right? And over time, I was amazed at now I do know these names. And you move to the advanced class and you start to understand there's a lot to this Tai Chi. It is based on compassion. They're all volunteers. You support each other. It's just this super safe environment to help everybody become healthier in each way. And the class dynamics are amazing. Our oldest individual is 89. She's amazing. Her fitness is incredible. And then we have a 19-year-old. So it's that cross demographic, right? That's so much fun. And we're all there just supporting each other and trying to learn. And over time, you just sort of relax and go, oh my gosh, but then you start to see the health benefits. So that's also, I think about when I'm doing the Virtuosity app in terms of what Tai Chi really does add to that. And I think it is significant. The other big thing Tai Chi teaches you, the most challenging thing is learning how to relax. And the instructors don't like to give feedback until you're at a certain point. But one of the comments they say to me constantly is, relax that jaw. Because when I'm starting to think, I can sense like, Trish, relax the jaw, relax the shoulders, right? And it's like, oh, and it's funny, Corey, I do that now all the time. I watch myself. And when I'm in a stressful situation or I'm feeling time pressure, it's like, relax. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that helps me manage, temperance and not losing my patience and not recognizing I may be frustrated, but bringing forward other dimensions to so I don't snap. In the past, I think I would have done that, right? I think it's really truly helped me. It's the combination of the Virtuosity app and Tai Chi and adding exercise and then getting more involved in nutrition and changing my diet. And then I'm so lucky I'm on this new path. I'm not quite sure where I'm going. But again, most of us are just on a journey, right? And
That's
recognizing
true.
that.
Yeah, it's I'm so glad that you found these. I think of them like tools to help kind of help us, well, in this case, since we're talking about character, tools that help us develop our character, but also help us notice areas of development that we can focus on. And, sport has always been a big piece for me as well. So I think about this kind of active movement piece. It's such a good place, but so many different tools that people can dive into. We did improv in our last session on collaboration. And it's just, yeah, trying to find those tools that work best for you and then using your character to kind of understand what are the best tools for me. Are these sustainable habits that I can build and how are they impacting my wellness? So that's really great that you found Tai Chi to help you with that.
Well, and one of the other things I love about the app, on a daily basis, it asks you about your flourishing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as I've started to do research into flourishing, it's interesting. There's a lot of research out there in the past. People were saying how happy, and there's a happiness index and this and that. They're now thinking, more importantly, it is about flourishing, right? And overall, generally, right? How are you feeling? How are you performing? And recognizing the things that are connected with that. So I really like the terminology that you use in the app and how it links to so much of the research that's going on.
Yeah, the flourishing domain is such a big and complex domain where I know it in terms of it's an outcome of character development. So I know a little bit about it from that point of view, but I know the scholars in that area just know so much more than I do. For the listeners that maybe aren't familiar with the app, the way we define flourishing is through three components. So your performance, your quality of relationships, and your well-being that we look at through mood. But there are a lot of different ways to measure flourishing and a lot more complex scales. Like even thinking about your financial stability, for example, is a really important metric towards flourishing. But yeah, it's this really comprehensive way to understand kind of, yeah, how well you're doing in life. And it's so complex. It is different than happiness as you're picking up. And it's so much more robust, I think, without being an expert necessarily in that area. Are there any other examples in terms of, you've talked about, how you're kind of on your own path, which I think is so interesting. Any other examples of how the daily practice has helped you navigate this unique new path that you're on?
I think I've had the luxury of really delving into the material. So again, because I have more time currently, and just really thinking about the information. And sometimes when we're busy and we're having to be involved in many other roles, in particular, before I retired from CRA, it was very, very busy as we transitioned out of the pandemic. And so again, we have a limited amount of resource and energy that we're able to do. So right now I've been spoiled because I have the luxury of spending a lot of time. And one of the challenges I have is I could spend a lot of time. I'm just amazed at like the movie clips. And then it just leads me to thinking about other things. And then, I'm thinking about Warren Buffett's quote that I've loved for years. Tell me who your heroes are, and I'll tell you who you're going to be or who you are.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And it makes me think, my current heroes, right? And in terms of people that I think reflect for me character. And for instance, the chef that owns 11 Madison Park, Daniel Hum, has been an amazing individual in terms of had this incredible restaurant in New York City before the pandemic. But the pandemic happened. He didn't want to lay off his employees, so he kept them all employed. But also he was thinking about, gosh, the planet and about diet and how could he impact the planet in a better manner and in terms of the food that he was providing. And so he decided to take his Michelin 3-star restaurant and turn it into a plant-based restaurant.
Wow.
And it was a big change. And when
Mhm.
he reopened, of course, they said, well, nobody ever gives 3-star Michelin, even 1-star to plant-based restaurant, right? And he
Mhm.
parked that because he really believed, he said, we need to find a better way forward. And what he's not saying is, steak isn't a bad thing. I just want to support something important to me. So what he
Mhm.
did is he has a table for 6 in the restaurant. You can still order steak, but he now
Mhm.
sources it from a very local farm. So the
Wow.
long and the short of it is he did get he is the first Michelin 3-star plant-based restaurant. And his interest, like he said, just come and experience. There's a different way here forward for those of us willing to try, right? And he's thinking about the planet, and then think about how you feel after you dine, right? Oftentimes
Mhm.
in the past, I started out as a very French-based cook. So a lot of, heavy sauces and whatever. And then when I think back, how would I feel after I ate? Well, gosh, perhaps not the best, right?
Mhm.
When you change your
Mhm.
eating and it's having that awareness, wow, that was magnificent. And the creativity and the artistry, right? And it's just amazing to see somebody like that take that on, have that vision going forward, right? It's just
Mhm.
incredible.
Yeah, that is so amazing. And I think, I've been really focused on nutrition, not from a culinary arts kind of lens that you're talking about, more just from a health perspective. And I've really found that the character approach around health to be so useful. And to your point about how do you feel after a meal, that has become so present in me because I found when I'm using the Virtuosity app and I reflect on my moods each day, I would notice the mood of feeling guilty creep up when I deviate too far from the health expectations that I have of myself, when I'm not eating the nutrition that I want, that I'm not feeling good, that guilt starts creeping up. And so for me, that's related to focusing on that integrity muscle. How do I continue to prioritize the things that are important to me? And then all of a sudden that guilt starts to go away and I'm not ticking it off anymore. So that's really interesting. And I think too, to your point about noticing these different kind of like role models or exemplars around you, that's one of the strategies that we rely on in character development. And I found that, having those 62 different behaviors, you can see different role models across all of those. So while we may have had like a handful of some role models in our life, you start to see just such a wide array of role models because everyone has their different strengths. And so that's, yeah, I found that as well. And I think it's really interesting that you're finding that in all different areas of your life.
Hmm. Yes.
So since you started the Virtuosity program, what parts of it have you enjoyed the most? Are there any dimensions that have resonated with you? Do you enjoy the sessions where we get to meet one another? Any exercises that have stood out to you? What has been the highlights of the program so far?
I think I really enjoyed the monthly sessions, because it's wonderful getting together with people who are going through their own journey and sharing that and understanding and listening to their insights. That's so important. And again, just sharing and seeing the commonality in terms of what we're feeling, but the passion that everybody has and the different avenues and venues of life that people come from that are all attracted, right? It just covers off everything actually. And I can't think of another development tool that does that actually. You have tools that focus on diet and sleep and whatever, but at the core is character. And so if we continue to build our character, the other thing I really like about the Virtuosity app and the character leader model in general is that your strength, it's not to reduce your strengths, it's to build up the other areas. And it's interesting, in the past, you're always told to work towards your strengths. Well, gosh, if you have other areas that aren't supporting that, they become vices. And I've seen that in myself, and you're like, oh my goodness, right? But again, it's not taking away from that, right? And saying, oh, we need to lower this. It's bringing up the other dimensions that support that, right? I just really like that whole concept. That has resonated hugely with me. And then the other big thing is just thinking about it daily. So at work, I used to do this blog, and I'd have quotes of the day and whatever. I still do that now. right? And again, I just really enjoy it, and what resonates me, and why is that resonating with me today? And what am I doing, right? And exactly, and just making the links there, which has been amazing. And because there's a tool that I can pick up and do it, I do it on a daily basis.
Yeah, the daily focus, it's just amazing to me how much it can transform everything else that you see. And even when I do it, it's amazing within a day how much depth you can kind of calibrate differently within a day. Like some days I'll do it and it's, 15% depth, whereas other days I'm thinking about it every single moment. And it's just amazing within a daily practice how much room for growth there even is within that. So we'll continue to look at that as the program evolves throughout the year. Just looking at the time here, as we are wrapping up our time together, the last question that I always like asking our guests is around this character quotient. And so for the listeners, if they don't know what the character quotient is, essentially Mary and I put together a set of 10 questions around 3 categories around your character awareness, your character development, and your character application in organizations to help people understand room for growth as they're bringing character essentially into the world. And so, yes, I'm asking all of the guests to share or actually do the character quotient assessment. And if you're willing to share your score and then potential areas that you're really happy with and areas that you are now more intrigued to focus on strengthening.
Great question, Corey. So my score was 69. And one of the most interesting things, I was asked how well I could identify character in myself, and then how well I thought I could do that in other individuals.
Mhm.
I gave myself a 5. I'm just learning. I think there's so much to learn. And the more you start to get into this material, I think what I've recognized is, oh my gosh, I'm just touching like the surface of the iceberg. And interestingly, so on a monthly basis, there's one behavior you select in a dimension, but all the other ones we don't cover because
Yeah.
there isn't time, right? And there's barely time to do that one. And I understand why now because of the different, we go through different, first of all, you look at it and then we activate it. And I love the program, but it's like that's a tiny piece of that.
Yeah.
And I think, oh my gosh, like I'm just beginning. And then am I able to really see that in other individuals? At times, perhaps in extreme situations, but on a general basis, I don't think I do that very well yet. I'm hopeful that will continue in my development, right? But I don't think so. And I think it's a lifelong process, to be honest with you. And I think it starts with ourselves. And I'm just a work in process. And I'm thinking I'm just at the beginner class in character, just like I was in Tai Chi.
Yeah, it's yeah, it really is a lifetime journey. Like we're just scraping the surface, and I definitely hear you in terms of, you know, all the different people you meet. It's a new opportunity to actually see how these virtues are manifesting differently. And so when you share a 5 out of 10 score, I think it is really important to just know that that's actually just opportunity to learn more and to see more. And I was sharing in our last podcast with Lorelai that it seems like that 10 is always like a moving goalpost. As you get into character more, as you discover it more, you actually see more opportunity for growth. And that's the blessing and the curse around character development is it is a lifelong journey and it will never be perfect, but it's such a worthwhile journey to be going on.
And once you see, you can't unsee what you've seen.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So anything else to share on the character quotient, by the way, before we wrap things up here?
But I don't think so. It's just I recognized I'm just at the beginning. I really liked it because it actually made me reflect on really what I thought where I thought I was at, and then how well I'm able to decipher character in other people. And I recognize I'm just at the beginning stages here, and there's a lot of growth, and it will happen. You're right, over a lifetime. I think it's interesting. I don't know whether I had this expectation that, in a year I'm going to do this and I'm going to be, it doesn't work that way, right? It's like
Yeah.
exercise or like anything, right?
Yeah.
And you have to put in the work. It's like exercise. Years ago, I remember one of my colleagues at work gave me the Jane Fonda video to do exercise.
Mhm.
I used to sit on the couch and watch it. I told her that. She said, okay, that's not helping, right? Same
That is
with
so funny.
character. yes, I did that. It's like, okay, you have to put in the work. And at times when you don't necessarily want to, or sometimes receiving feedback that sometimes perhaps we really don't want to hear. And, I was blessed with a team. Years and years ago, had the opportunity to work with this group of individuals who, shall we say, weren't very warmly receptive to me.
Mm.
And so I decided that I needed to connect with each of them. And I remember at the first meeting, one of them stood up and said, "You're probably not going to like what we're going to tell you. We see you as an outsider. You're technically very, very bright. We really don't want you here. But if you really want to help us as a group of people, you need to figure out who we are and you need to let us participate because we have our own ideas too." And I'll tell you, Corey, I remember I sat there and I was really quiet. And again, I thought, wow, but I was so grateful they had the courage to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, that unit went on to do amazing things, but it was a point of reflection for me. And again, at times can be very driven. And I was a very technical person at that time. And that's what they were getting from me. They weren't getting support. I wasn't listening. And they were feeling like, my goodness, we have tons of ideas. All you need to do is ask, right? So I'm so glad they had the courage to do that.
That is such a powerful piece. And it actually brings me back to the quote that you said really drove a lot of your career actually around this idea. I think it's Roosevelt that said it. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that has really resonated with me as well. That's been such a key quote for me. And it is so true. And you can care about other people, but if they don't know that you care, they're not going to trust your technical expertise. And so that's such a powerful piece. As we're focusing on humanity this month, that's front of mind for me.
Yes, me too.
So I always like to provide just an opportunity in case there hasn't been anything, or if there has been something that we haven't covered that you'd like to share, just want to turn it over to you. No pressure to share anything, but are there any final words you'd like to share before we close up our time together?
I just think this is something that, you think about humanity or the world going forward and globally going forward. So every Friday I get the economic news from the World Economic Forum. And this is where this piece belongs. Because again, it just, we live in a world oftentimes right now that can be very divided. And again, that's a reflection of character. I love Adam Grant when he says, think again, right? And so being respectful, listening to that other person, truly trying to understand their position. And again, being respectful when you present your position and then trying to find that middle ground. As we move forward as a society, that's what we'll need to do. And right now, I think we're at an interesting point, and I think character is actually the solution in a big way to moving everything forward. I really do.
I could not agree more. And I actually just went to a really amazing dinner last night. It's a new initiative called Think, where it's this idea of trying to listen better so that we can think better. And I absolutely love character's role in it because it has such a nuanced approach that allows everyone to see that to think better or to listen better, everyone has different bottlenecks. Like for some people, it is having stronger empathy. For some people, it is actually having more purpose or conviction in the ideas that they do have, and to be able to share them and address those. So yeah, I couldn't agree more that character is just such a complex but foundational way to address all of the challenges that we're facing today. Well, thank you so much, Trish, for joining us. I absolutely love the conversation. And of course, the connection that we share around well-being is something that I'm very passionate about. So it was absolutely amazing to hear how focused you are on the well-being side and how character is really playing a pivotal role in that. And then also exploring all of the history and everything that you've done with CRA. It's just been incredible. And I think a lot of the listeners will really enjoy hearing about some of those really specific practices that you've been able to implement as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Trish.
And thank you for having me in as a guest and introducing me to the Virtuosity app and having me part of the program.
You have just finished another episode from the Virtuosity podcast. If you have any questions and want to connect, please reach out to me at Corey@virtuositycharacter.ca. I'm also on LinkedIn, so let's connect. As always, thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.